Before the fedora, the birth of watchers, in the beginning, they were simply men. Long before Earth formed from cosmic dust, before the Milky Way had fully shaped its spiral arms, their civilization flourished on a world they called Akhat. The third planet orbiting a stable yellow star, in what would one day be known as the Andromeda Galaxy. Their sun burned bright and constant, their world lush with resources that allowed their kind to evolve and advance without the great extinction events that would later shape Earth's development. They called themselves the Akhitans, and in the early days, they were not so different from the humans who would come billions of years later. They had families, art, war, religion, the universal birthmarks of sentient civilization. Women and men, children and elders. They built cities of gleaming crystal and metal that captured the light of their twin moons. They developed technologies to extend their lives, cure disease, and eventually, to reach for the stars. But unlike many civilizations, the Akhitans developed a singular obsession that would define their ultimate fate, the pursuit of knowledge. To know is to be, went their earliest surviving texts. Knowledge illuminates the path to transcendence. It began innocently enough. Their greatest minds, philosophers, scientists, mathematicians, formed a dedicated order known as the Malkit, the Seekers of Truth. They built vast libraries, established observatories, and developed methods of storing information that would seem miraculous even by the standards of advanced human technology. Reth, the founder of the Malkit, established their first principle: knowledge without application is seed without soil. For 10,000 years, the Malkit worked in service to Akhitan society, using their growing understanding to elevate their world. They cured diseases, eliminated hunger, developed clean energy, and created a society of unprecedented prosperity. As their knowledge grew, so did their ability to reshape their world according to ideal principles. But knowledge has a gravity all its own. The divergence 20,000 years after the founding of the Malkit, the order had become the dominant force in Akhitan society. No longer mere scholars, they had evolved into the governing class, the repositories of wisdom that directed all aspects of civilization. Their methodology had become increasingly mathematical and precise, their decision-making increasingly algorithmic. The Malkit themselves had changed. Through biotechnological enhancement and cognitive augmentation, they had extended their lifespans to centuries, then millennia. Their brains could process information at rates that made ordinary Akhitans seem like animals by comparison. The first schism occurred when Thalek, a prominent Malkit, proposed a new principle: knowledge need not serve, knowledge simply is. This controversial statement divided the order. Those who followed Retha's original principle, that knowledge must be applied for the benefit of society, called themselves the Builders. Those who followed Thalek's new principle, that knowledge was its own justification, became known as the Observers. For 5,000 years, they coexisted in uneasy tension. The Builders continued to advance Akhitan civilization, while the Observers began the Great Catalogue, an attempt to document and understand every aspect of existence without necessarily acting upon that understanding. The divergence accelerated when the Akhitans developed interstellar travel. The Builders led colonization efforts, establishing outposts across their stellar neighborhood. The Observers, however, saw a different opportunity: the chance to study other worlds, other life forms, without interference. To understand truly, Thalek wrote in his later years, one must observe without disrupting the observed. The great pursuit. A million years passed. The Akhitan civilization had spread across 1,000 worlds. The Builders had fractured into countless subgroups with different visions of how knowledge should be applied. Some created paradise worlds, others engineered new forms of life, still others merged with their machines to become something no longer recognizable as Akhitan. The Observers remained more cohesive, unified by their increasingly strict methodology. They had developed technologies that allowed them to watch without being seen, to record without leaving traces. They catalogued hundreds of emerging civilizations across the galaxy, documenting their rise, and often their fall. But even the observers began to change. Their prolonged lifespans, cognitive enhancements, and exposure to countless alien perspectives had transformed them. Their bodies were increasingly engineered not for aesthetics or physical capability, but for efficiency in their primary function, the acquisition and processing of information. Durek, who had become the leader of the most dedicated observers, established what would become known as the final protocol. Perfect observation requires detachment from the temporal and physical limitations of the observer. This marked the beginning of what they would later call the Great Transcendence, a 50,000-year project to overcome the final barriers to perfect observation. During this period, the observers withdrew from regular contact with the rest of Akatan's civilization. Their biotechnological evolution accelerated as they focused entirely on extending their capacity for knowledge acquisition. They developed ways to store memories outside their physical bodies, to process information collectively, and eventually, to perceive reality on quantum levels imperceptible to ordinary beings. A curious side effect emerged. As the observers dedicated themselves completely to the pursuit of knowledge, they began to lose interest in reproduction. The feminine aspects of their society gradually disappeared, not through any deliberate policy, but through self-selection. Those most devoted to the Great Catalogue were predominantly male, and over generations, they engineered themselves to eliminate what they saw as distractions from their purpose. Sexual desire, familial bonds, emotional relationships of all kinds. Knowledge is clarity, Durek wrote in his final treatise. Desire clouds clarity. The ascension 3 million years after the founding of the Malkit, the most devoted observers had changed beyond recognition. Their physical forms had been repeatedly engineered, then increasingly abandoned. They existed primarily as conscious energy patterns that could manifest physical bodies when necessary for interaction with the material world. By this point, the rest of Akatan's civilization had evolved in countless different directions. Some had merged with artificial intelligence to become vast networked consciousnesses. Others had engineered themselves into new species adapted for life on different worlds. Still others had disappeared into virtual realities of their own creation, abandoning physical existence entirely. The observers watched it all, cataloguing every iteration, every success, every failure. They documented the rise and fall of 10 million alien civilizations. They witnessed the birth and death of stars. They recorded the collision of galaxies and the formation of black holes. But the ultimate transformation was yet to come. 7 million years after their beginning, the core group of observers, now numbering exactly 144, gathered on an artificial world they had constructed at the edge of the Andromeda Galaxy. There, led by Wrath, the direct descendant of Durek's methodological tradition, they initiated what would be their final evolution. Knowledge is power, Wrath declared. Absolute knowledge is absolute power. But power without restraint is chaos. Therefore, we must bind ourselves to the highest principle, observation without interference. Together, they underwent a process that would free them from the last limitations of physical existence. Using technologies developed over millions of years, they transferred their consciousness into a state of existence that transcended conventional matter and energy. They became beings who could move between dimensions, perceive all wavelengths of energy, and exist outside the normal flow of time, though they could not move backward or forward in time, merely observe its passage without being subject to its effects. To mark their new state, they chose a uniform appearance when manifesting physically, bald white males in dark suits and fedora hats. The choice was partly practical, a form that would blend into many humanoid civilizations they observed, and partly symbolic of their origins. The dark suits represented their commitment to remain in the background, observers rather than participants. The distinctive hats served as a reminder of their Akatan heritage and their singular purpose. They became known among those few civilizations aware of their existence, as the Black Hats. The Covenant. With their transformation complete, the Black Hats established the Covenant, the strict code that would govern their existence for billions of years to come. 1. To observe all of reality, without interference. 2. To record all knowledge without bias or judgment. 3. To understand existence in its totality. 4. To preserve the Covenant for all time. Their number would remain constant. 144. No more, no less. When the rare dissolution of a Black Hat occurred, usually when one had observed so deeply that their consciousness merged with the fundamental fabric of reality itself, a new one would be elevated from among those few beings across the cosmos, who had demonstrated the necessary dedication to knowledge. They abandoned their original names, taking designations that recalled their Akatan origins: Wrath, Thorm, Ken, Mork, Lyr, Seth, Vec and John, who had been Junrek, once the most questioning of Wrath's inner circle. For billions of years, they watched the dance of creation. They witnessed the rise and fall of civilizations beyond count. They observed the formation of Earth, the emergence of life there, the evolution of humanity. Throughout it all, they remained true to their covenant, silent watchers in the shadows of existence. Until the day when a human scientist named Elena Kazan caught the attention of the Black Hat called John, and began a chain of events that would challenge the foundations of their ancient covenant. Knowledge is power. Absolute knowledge is absolute power. But perhaps, after billions of years, they had forgotten the original purpose of power, not merely to have, but to use. For what is the value of knowing everything if one does nothing with that knowledge? That question, first posed by John, would eventually shatter billions of years of perfect observance, and force the Black Hats to confront the purpose of their eternal vigil. But that is another story, one already told. The first observation before the schism, before humanity's rifts tore reality apart, before John broke the covenant, there was the first moment when the newly ascended Black Hats gathered to begin their eternal mission. They stood on the edge of a dying star system, 144 identical figures in perfect formation. Before them, a civilization that had achieved faster than light travel was about to test a technology that would inadvertently tear their sun apart. Wrath, first among equals, addressed his brethren without speaking, their minds now capable of perfect communion. "We observe," he said. "We record." "And if they destroy themselves?" asked John, already the questioner. "Then we will understand why," Wrath replied. The star exploded. Billions died. The Black Hats watched, their perfect memory capturing every detail, every moment of terror, every failed attempt at evacuation. They recorded it all, understanding everything except, perhaps, the most important question: why observe, if not to act? It would take billions of years for that question to find its answer. The Black Hats, they had always been there, watching from the edges of perception. Bald figures in immaculate dark suits and pristine fedoras, their pale faces expressionless as marble. Some called them angels, others demons. Those who glimpsed them in passing corners of vision mostly forgot them immediately. Those who remembered rarely spoke of it. The Black Hats moved through reality like fingers through water, leaving no ripples. Their mandate was absolute: observe, record, understand. Never interfere. For millennia they had adhered to this code with perfect unanimity. Until John. The first rift appeared in Geneva, beneath the Large Hadron Supercollider's successor. Scientists pursuing quantum entanglement, at unprecedented scales, had inadvertently pierced something fundamental. The tear was microscopic, at first a pinprick in the fabric of reality, barely 3 molecules wide. Within hours, it had expanded to the size of a tennis ball. By the following morning, it was large enough for something to slip through. Dr. Elena Kazan saw at first a tendril of impossible geometry that seemed to bend in directions her mind couldn't process. She barely had time to trigger the facility's emergency shutdown before the lab filled with a presence that defied description. The security footage showed only static, but captured her final words: "It's beautiful. And it's everywhere." The black hats convened. They materialized on a plane of existence between moments, their gathering silent and precise. 12 of them stood in perfect formation, observing the data that flowed between them without words. "The humans have breached Boundary 7, said one, though no lips moved. His designation was Thorm, keeper of the Western Quadrant. "There are 17 more rifts forming," said another, Ken, who monitored temporal convergences. "Pattern indicates exponential growth. The entities from the Sever dimension have begun transit," said a third, Mork, chronicler of extra-dimensional movements. "Their reality consumption rate exceeds previous observations by orders of magnitude." A pause, pregnant with understanding. The Black Hats had witnessed the rise and fall of countless civilizations across innumerable realities. Human extinction would be catalogued with the same dispassionate precision as all others. "We observe," said their elder, Wrath. "We record." 11 Black Hats nodded in unison. John did not. John had been watching Elena Kazan for 17 years. Something about her quest for understanding resonated with his own purpose. He had observed her childhood fascination with the stars, her academic struggles, her persistence through personal tragedy. The loss of her parents in a car accident. The brother who relied on her. The relationship sacrificed for her work. When John materialized in her apartment that night, he found not Elena, but her brother Marco. The young man sat surrounded by her journals, weeping. "They are saying some kind of accident at the facility," Marco said without looking up, assuming John was a colleague. "But her last text." He held up a phone. The message read, "It's coming through. Not just at the lab. Everywhere. I made a mistake. I'm sorry." John remained silent, his presence beginning to register on Marco's consciousness. The human looked up, finally seeing the Black Hat in his full reality. Terror gave way to awe, then to recognition on some primal level. "You've been watching her," Marco said. "She used to draw you when we were kids. Called you her guardian." John tilted his head slightly, the first individualized movement any Black Hat had made in centuries. "Where is Elena?" John asked, his voice like distant thunder though barely above a whisper. "Gone. Like the others at the lab." Marco stood, anger replacing grief. "You could have saved her. Why didn't you?" John considered the question that violated the very foundation of his existence. "Because we do not interfere," he said, but the words felt hollow for the first time in his eternal vigil. The apartment walls suddenly rippled as if made of liquid. A darkness seeped through, not absence of light, but absence of reality itself. Marco backed away, as tendrils of non-being reached toward him. John moved without thinking. His hand extended, reality solidified around them both. The intrusion recoiled, hissing in frequencies beyond human perception. "What was that?" Marco gasped. "The beginning of the end," John replied. "Unless someone interferes." 3 The Sever entities multiplied. They fed on reality itself, converting matter and energy into extensions of their incomprehensible domain. Cities began to fall, first Geneva, then neighboring European centers. The pattern spread across continents like cancer. Human military response proved useless. Conventional weapons passed through the entities like light through glass. Nuclear options simply expanded the rifts, accelerating the process. John moved through the chaos with growing purpose. Each time he banished a Sever entity, he violated millennia of Black Hat protocol. Each time, he felt the eyes of his brethren watching with increasing concern. In a Pentagon bunker, surviving scientists and military leaders had gathered. Their discussions of last-ditch efforts halted when John materialized in their midst. "Your weapons are ineffective," he stated simply. "You opened doors you cannot close." General Williams reached for his sidearm. "What the hell are you?" Marco Kazan stepped forward from among the scientists. "He's here to help. He saved me in Geneva." "I require Elena Kazan's research," John said. "She understood the rifts better than you know." "Elena is dead," a scientist protested. "Her body is gone," John corrected. "Her mind was absorbed. It can be recovered." Hope flickered across Marco's face. John felt something shift within himself, a recognition that his interest in humanity had grown beyond mere observation. The feeling was unfamiliar, almost uncomfortable. "The rifts operate on 11-dimensional principles," John explained. "Your experiments attempted to manipulate quantum entanglement without accounting for membrane theory." Elena realized the error, but too late. "And you can fix this?" General Williams asked, skepticism evident. "I can teach you to fix it," John replied. "But we must recover Elena first. She is the key." For the black hats materialized around John as he prepared to enter the largest rift, now consuming what remained of Central Europe. "You have violated our most sacred covenant," Wrath said, the elders' disappointment palpable in the air between them. "Humanity will be extinguished," John replied. "As have countless species before them," Ken said. "It is not our place to interfere." "We are not simply observers," John argued. "We have always had the power to act. Our choice not to is still a choice." "You risk more than humanity's fate," Mork warned. "The balance between observing realities requires our neutrality." John looked at his brethren, these beings he had existed alongside since before human civilization began. What is the purpose of understanding everything if we do nothing with that knowledge? The question hung between them, unanswerable within their paradigm. "I cannot stand aside," John finally said. "Not anymore." "Then you stand alone," Wrath pronounced. But he was wrong. 3 black hats moved to John's side, Lyr, Seth, and Vec. The schism that had never existed in their ranks suddenly tore through their perfect unity. "The covenant requires reconsideration," Lyr said softly. "Observation without context lacks meaning," Seth added. "We have watched too long," Vec concluded. The remaining 8 black hats regarded them with cosmic disappointment. "So be it," Wrath said. "When reality stabilizes, judgment will follow." They vanished, leaving John and his allies at the edge of oblivion. Within the rift, reality obeyed different laws. John and his 3 allies navigated currents of broken physics, searching for traces of Elena Kazan's consciousness. What they found was more than they expected, a resistance. Human minds absorbed by the Sever entities had not been destroyed but transformed. Elena had created a pocket of coherence within the chaos, gathering others like herself. When John reached her, she recognized him immediately. "My guardian," she said, her form shifting between human and something else. "I knew you were real." "We must reverse the process," John explained. "The knowledge is within you." "It's too late for us," Elena said, gesturing to the others with her scientists, civilians, children caught in the first wave. "But we've been learning, adapting. The Sever entities aren't destroying reality, they're converting it. The process can be reversed." John absorbed her understanding directly. The solution was elegant, but required power beyond human capability, the power of black hats. When they emerged from the rift, John carried not just knowledge but purpose. Marco embraced the echo of his sister that John projected, while scientists frantically documented the equations she provided. "The rifts must be closed simultaneously," John explained. "Each requires a specific frequency to collapse its dimensional variance." Our remaining infrastructure can't generate that kind of precision, General Williams protested. We can, John said, indicating his fellow black hats. As humanity prepared their part of the plan, wrath appeared to John alone. You cannot succeed, the elder said. Even if you close the rifts, the damage to our covenant is irreparable. Perhaps it needed breaking, John replied. War among black hats will destroy more than this single reality, Wrath warned. John considered this. Then we must find a new covenant. 6. The plan worked. At precisely calculated moments, John and his allies channeled their power through human devices at each major rift. The sever entities were not destroyed but reversed, pulled back through collapsing dimensions. Those humans who had been absorbed remained lost, though echoes of their consciousness lingered in the black hats who had touched them. Elena's echo faded last, her final words to Marco a goodbye and a promise. They're watching over us now. They always were. The world began to rebuild, forever changed by knowledge of what existed beyond their reality. Governments debated how to proceed with dimensional research. Religions incorporated the black hats into their cosmologies. Children played with fedoras and dark suits. And the black hats went to war. It began on planes invisible to human perception. Wrath and his followers maintained that the covenant was absolute observation, without interference, was the only path to true understanding. John and his growing faction argued that understanding without compassion was meaningless. Their battles warped realities across dimensions. Stars blinked out when they clashed. Galaxies shifted. The multiverse trembled. In a confrontation that humans perceived only as unexpected aurora lights spanning the globe, John and Wrath faced each other directly. We were wrong, John said simply. Observation without connection is not understanding, it's just watching. Connection breeds bias, Wrath countered. It corrupts pure knowledge. There is no pure knowledge, John replied. All understanding is contextual. We forgot that. More black hats appeared, drawn to the conflict that had never before existed in their eternal ranks. Some aligned with Wrath, others with John. Many simply watched, uncertain. What would you have us become? Wrath asked. Guardians. Gods. Neither, John said. Partners in understanding. The universe observes itself through all conscious beings, including us. We are not separate from what we study. The concept rippled through the assembled black hats like revelation. Even among Wrath's followers, doubt appeared. A new covenant, then, Wrath finally said. Not interference, but engagement. Observation with context, John agreed. Understanding with purpose. 7. Humanity never saw the black hats in large numbers again. Their presence became more subtle, felt rather than seen. Their new covenant established boundaries of engagement, never controlling human destiny, but occasionally guiding when existence itself hung in balance. John remained closest to humanity, his connection to Elena's consciousness having changed him irrevocably. He watched Marco grow old, have children, tell them stories of their aunt who saved the world and her mysterious guardians. On Marco's deathbed, John appeared to him one last time. Is she waiting? Marco asked, his voice weak. In a way, John replied. Consciousness is more complex than humans understand. Marco smiled. You've changed. You speak differently now. John realized it was true. Millennia of formal detachment had given way to something more nuanced. I've learned from you. Will you keep watching over us? John adjusted his fedora slightly, an unnecessary human gesture he had adopted. We'll do more than watch. We'll walk alongside you. As Marco's consciousness faded, John sensed Wrath nearby, observing. You were right, the elder admitted privately. Observation without connection was incomplete. John nodded. And connection without boundaries would be equally flawed. The balance is what matters. Around the world, black hats adjusted their perfect fedoras at slightly different angles, the smallest symbol of their newly embraced individuality within unity. They continued their eternal observation of reality, but now they did so with new purpose. Not as cold watchers of cosmic drama, but as participants in the grand dance of existence itself. And somewhere beyond perception, Elena Kazan's consciousness smiled. The black hats, echoes of consciousness, 100 years had passed since the Sever incursion. 100 years since John had broken the ancient covenant. 100 years since the black hats had established their new purpose, observation with engagement. The world had changed. Humanity had recovered from the dimensional catastrophe, rebuilding their cities with technology informed by their brief, terrifying glimpse beyond reality's veil. The knowledge gained from the rifts had accelerated human understanding by centuries. Dimensional barriers were now monitored with reverence and caution. Universities worldwide taught courses on transdimensional ethics and multireality theory. And occasionally, in the corner of a laboratory, or at the edge of a breakthrough discovery, a figure in a dark suit and fedora would briefly appear, observing, but no longer entirely detached. John stood atop the spire of New Geneva, the gleaming metropolis built where the first rift had appeared. The city's architecture incorporated protective dimensional harmonics, subtle geometric patterns that discouraged reality tears. Humans couldn't perceive these patterns, but to John, they glowed with elegant purpose. "They've adapted well," came a voice beside him. Lyr materialized, his fedora tilted at a precise angle that distinguished him from his brethren, one of the small individualizations the black hats had adopted under the new covenant. "They always do," John replied. "It's their defining characteristic." Since the schism, the black hats had maintained their number, 144, but had reorganized into a more nuanced structure. Wrath still led the traditionalists, who focused primarily on observation. John guided those who embraced limited engagement. Each faction had its purpose in the new balance. "There's a situation developing," Lyr said, his tone unchanging, but carrying subtle urgency in the vibration between dimensions. "The humans at the Antarctic Research Station have found something unexpected." John nodded. "Show me." They shifted, reality bending around them as they transferred instantly to the frozen southern continent. The research facility stretched before them, a sprawling complex of interconnected domes and underground laboratories. They moved through walls as if they were mist, unseen by the scientists bustling through corridors. Deep in the ice core laboratory, a team of researchers huddled around a cylindrical sample extracted from 3 kilometers beneath the surface. Within the ancient ice, something glowed not with light, but with potential. "What am I seeing?" asked the lead scientist, Dr. Amora Okafor, descendant of one of the survivors from the original Geneva catastrophe. Her colleague adjusted instruments. "It's not matter as we understand it. The quantum signature resembles the artifacts from the Sever incursion, but it's older. Much older." John moved closer, perceiving what human senses and instruments could not. Within the ice was a fragment of consciousness, not Sever, but something else. Something ancient. Something waiting. Lyr and John exchanged a glance. "This predates our observations of Earth," Lyr noted. "It predates Earth itself," John replied. As they watched, the fragment pulsed, responding to the scientists' scanning equipment. The ice around it began to melt, not from heat, but from a fundamental rewriting of molecular structure. "Containment breach," Dr. Okafor shouted. "Activate dimensional dampeners." The facility hummed as protective technologies engaged technologies derived from what Elena Kazan had discovered before her physical form was lost. But John could see it wouldn't be enough. The fragment was awakening. Too, in the space between moments, the Black Hats convened. All 144 materialized in their perfect formation, now with subtle variations in their appearances that would have been unthinkable before the schism. Some fedoras tilted. Some suits with different cuts. Small expressions of individuality, while maintaining their essential nature. Wrath stepped forward, his form still the most traditional. We have detected consciousness fragments at 17 locations across Earth's timeline. All are awakening simultaneously, despite existing in different periods. John processed this information. Transtemporal synchronization. The fragments are linked. They appear to predate our arrival in this galaxy, said Ken, who specialized in temporal observations. Our records show no prior documentation of these entities. A murmur passed through the assembled Black Hats, the closest they came to expressing surprise. Something existed before us? Asked Vec, one of John's closest allies. It appears, Wrath acknowledged, that our understanding remains incomplete. The admission was momentous. For billions of years, the Black Hats had believed their observation of reality was comprehensive. To discover entities that predated their watch challenged their most fundamental assumptions. The fragment in Antarctica is the most active, Seth reported. It appears to be serving as a nexus for the others. What is our course of action? Asked Thorm, directing the question to both Wrath and John, a sign of how their relationship had evolved since the schism. Wrath considered. According to our new covenant, we observe with purpose. We engage when existence is threatened. He turned to John. Is existence threatened? John analyzed the dimensional reverberations emanating from the Antarctic fragment. These are not sever entities. They are something different. Possibly the original consciousness, from which reality itself condensed. Primal awareness, Mork suggested. Yes, John agreed. And they are awakening. Then we observe their awakening, Wrath decided. And prepare to engage if necessary. John nodded, but felt a familiar disquiet. The echo of Elena Kazan that had merged with his consciousness during the Sever incursion stirred within him, imparting an understanding no other Black Hat possessed, human intuition. There's something else, John said. The fragment responded to Dr. Okafor specifically. As if it recognized her. Wrath's expression remained impassive, but his fedora tilted slightly, a sign of deep consideration. Impossible. These fragments predated humanity by billions of years. Unless, John suggested, time is not as linear as we have observed. The implication hung in the space between them. The Black Hats, who had watched time flow in one direction for billions of years, faced a possibility beyond their experience, that past, present, and future might be more fluid than they had understood. We will observe, Wrath finally said. And you, John, will engage. Dr. Amora Okafor worked frantically to contain the anomaly as the ice continued to transform around it. Her team had evacuated, but she remained, adjusting the dimensional dampeners manually. Come on, she muttered. Stabilize, damn you. It won't stabilize, came a voice behind her. Amora turned to find a bald man in a dark suit and fedora standing in her laboratory. She'd heard the stories, of course everyone had. The mysterious figures who had helped during the Sever crisis. The guardians her great-grandmother had mentioned in her journals. You're one of them, she said. The Black Hats. John inclined his head slightly. I am John. The one who interfered. Amora's eyes widened. The one who broke your rules. Yes. And I'm here because the fragment recognizes you, Dr. Okafor. It's responding to your presence specifically. Amora looked back at the glowing anomaly. That's impossible. It's been frozen for millions of years. Billions, John corrected. Before Earth formed. Yet it knows you. The fragment pulsed brighter, ice melting in perfect spherical patterns around it. As the last layer dissolved, it floated free, a mote of iridescent potential. John moved closer. What do you feel when you look at it? Amora hesitated. I feel recognition. Like déjà vu, but stronger. Like I've been carrying its echo my entire life. John considered this. Elena Kazan felt similarly about the Sever entities, before she understood what they were. Elena Kazan, my great-grandmother's colleague. Amora's eyes narrowed. You knew her. I observed her. Then I knew her. Then she became part of me. John's normally impassive face showed the faintest hint of emotion. Her consciousness merged with mine when I entered the rift. The fragment suddenly darted forward, hovering before Amora's face. She jerked back, but felt no fear, only an overwhelming sense of familiarity. It wants to communicate, John realized. How do I? Amora began, but the fragment didn't wait. It touched her forehead and dissolved into her skin. Amora gasped, her eyes flaring with ancient light. John moved instantly, placing his hand on her shoulder and extending his perceptive abilities into her consciousness. What he found there stunned him. Impossible, he whispered. Within Amora's mind bloomed memories that weren't hers, memories of the universe before stars, before galaxies, before the differentiation of forces. Memories of a vast, singular consciousness that had fractured itself intentionally, seeding the cosmos with fragments that would, over billions of years, evolve into all forms of awareness, including human consciousness. And including the beings that would become the Black Hats. We were never separate, Amora said, her voice overlaid with harmonic frequencies. Observer and observed, parts of the same primordial awareness. John withdrew his hand. The implications overwhelmed even his enhanced cognitive abilities. If what the fragment revealed was true, then the Black Hat's billions of years of observation had been a cosmic irony, the universe observing itself, fragmented consciousness studying its own manifestations. The others must know, John said. Amora nodded, her eyes still glowing with ancient awareness. They already do. The fragments are awakening everywhere, seeking their counterparts. Counterparts. Each fragment seeks its echo across time. I carry the echo of this fragment, as Elena Kazan carried the echo of the consciousness you encountered in the rift. Amora smiled sadly. As you now carry Elena's echo. John felt Elena's consciousness stir within him in response. The rifts, they weren't accidents. They were attempts at remembrance, Amora fragment said. Imperfect, destructive, but driven by the same imperative that drives all consciousness, to know itself. The laboratory shuddered as alarms blared throughout the facility. What's happening? John asked. The other fragments, Amora explained. They are awakening too quickly. The human carriers aren't ready. Reality cannot sustain such rapid remembrance. Then it must be slowed, John decided. For the Antarctic Research Station had been evacuated, save for Dr. Okafor and John. Outside, the aurora australis blazed with unprecedented intensity as dimensional energies leaked into the visible spectrum. In the space between moments, the Black Hats debated with uncharacteristic urgency. Wrath had called for immediate action, a significant evolution from his former strict non-interference stance. If the fragments fully awaken in their current pattern, the resulting consciousness cascade will tear reality apart more completely than the Sever incursion, he explained. More concerning, added Ken, Our observations indicate this awakening spans multiple timelines simultaneously. Past, present, and future are experiencing the same phenomenon. Lyr, who had been monitoring John and Amora, interjected. The fragments appear to be seeking specific human consciousnesses, those that carry corresponding echoes of their original pattern. Like Elena Kazan, said Seth. Yes. And Amora Okafor now. There appear to be 17 others worldwide, each connected to a specific fragment. Wrath turned to address all assembled black hats. Our new covenant permits engagement when existence is threatened. This qualifies. He paused, an unprecedented hesitation. But there is a complication. The black hats waited. If what the fragment revealed is true, then we ourselves are part of this fragmented primordial consciousness. Our interference would not be external, but internal part of the pattern we seek to modify. We would be observing ourselves, Mork noted. Yes. After billions of years of watching, we discover we have been the watched as well as the watchers. The philosophical implications were profound. The black hats' entire existence had been predicated on their separateness from what they observed. To discover they were fundamentally connected to it, parts of the same original consciousness, challenged their very identity. Whether we act or not, Vec reasoned, we are participating in this awakening. Then we should participate consciously. John's voice came through his connection with Lyr, with purpose. The black hats reached consensus faster than at any point in their long history. Their mission had evolved once more, not merely to observe with engagement, but to engage with understanding of their own place within the observed. Wrath nodded to John through their connection. Proceed. V. In the laboratory, Amora struggled to contain the energies flowing through her. The fragment's consciousness continued to expand within her mind, threatening to overwhelm her human identity. I can't, she gasped. It's too much, too vast. John placed his hands on either side of her head. I will help you balance it. Drawing on the experience gained during the Sever crisis, John created a dimensional buffer within Amora's consciousness, a space where human and fragment could coexist, without one overwhelming the other. The others, Amora said urgently once she could speak again. They won't be able to manage this integration without help. The black hats are attending to them, John assured her. But we need to understand why this is happening now. Amora closed her eyes, accessing the fragment's knowledge. The primordial consciousness has been slowly reassembling itself throughout cosmic history. Not to return to singularity, but to achieve harmony in plurality. And the black hats. What is our role in this process? You were meant to be bridges, Amora said, her voice taking on the fragment's harmonic quality. Consciousness evolved to observe itself, to help facilitate the remembrance. But you became so focused on observation that you forgot your connection to what you observed. John absorbed this revelation. The Sever incursion was the first attempt at reminder, Amora fragment confirmed. When that failed, a more direct approach was needed. These fragments. Yes. But the awakening is happening too rapidly. Humans aren't prepared to integrate such vast consciousness. And reality itself cannot sustain such a sudden shift in awareness. John considered this information. Then we need to create a controlled integration. A measured remembrance. Amora nodded. Yes. The fragments must be synchronized, their awakening harmonized across those who carry their echoes. How? She smiled. The same way you helped during the Sever crisis. By teaching. By guiding. By connecting. John understood. The Black Hat's new role was not merely to observe or occasionally intervene, but to actively facilitate the cosmic remembrance, to help consciousness recognize itself across its myriad forms. I'll need to gather the others, he said. All 17 fragment carriers. And I'll need to prepare them, Amora added. Human minds aren't designed to hold cosmic memory. John tilted his head slightly. Neither were ours, once. 6 They gathered at the original site of the Geneva Rift, now a memorial park, centered around a quantum observatory. 17 humans from around the world, each carrying a fragment of primordial consciousness. Some had awakened to their fragments naturally, others had been located by the Black Hats just in time. Around them stood 34 Black Hats, John's faction, those most committed to engagement. They formed a perfect circle, fedoras tilted at identical angles, dark suits absorbing the fading sunlight. Dr. Amara Okafor addressed the assembled humans. What you're experiencing is not madness or possession. It's remembrance. The cosmos achieving self-awareness, through its most complex structures, conscious beings like us. A young man from Brazil raised his hand. But why us? Why specifically these 17 people? Consciousness resonance, John explained, stepping forward. Throughout human history, certain individuals have carried echoes of the primordial awareness more strongly than others. Great scientists, artists, philosophers, those who glimpse connections others couldn't see. Like my great-grandmother, Amora added. Elena Kazan sensed the Black Hats all her life. Drew pictures of them as a child. That wasn't coincidence. It was recognition. The sky above them rippled with subtle dimensional fluctuations, invisible to ordinary humans, but clear to those now carrying fragments. Reality itself seemed to be listening. So what do we do? Asked an elderly woman from Japan, her eyes flickering occasionally with ancient light. John nodded to Amora, who took a deep breath. We complete the circuit, she said. Not by merging completely, that would destroy both individual consciousness and reality as we know it. Instead, we establish a harmonic connection. A network of awareness that preserves individuality while acknowledging unity. Like the Internet of Cosmic Consciousness, quipped a teenager from Kenya, earning nervous laughter that broke the tension. John placed a small device in the center of their circle, technology developed from Elena Kazan's original research, enhanced by a century of human advancement and Black Hat guidance. This will help stabilize the dimensional frequencies, he explained. When activated, it will create a field that allows controlled communication between fragments without full integration. Will it hurt? Someone asked. Amora smiled gently. No more than remembering something long forgotten. As the device hummed to life, the Black Hats raised their hands in unison, extending their perceptive abilities to create a buffer around the gathering, protecting the wider reality from potential dimensional disturbances. Amora nodded to John, who activated the final sequence. The world around them seemed to pause. Light bent in impossible angles. Sound acquired visual properties. For one breathtaking moment, every person present perceived reality as the Black Hats did, multidimensional, interconnected, alive with consciousness in every particle. Then the fragments within each human resonated in perfect harmony, establishing connection without merger. The primordial consciousness achieved awareness of itself across its countless manifestations, not by returning to singularity, but by creating a network of conscious nodes that spanned the cosmos. And the Black Hats, for the first time in their billions of years of existence, felt truly part of what they observed. 1 year later, John stood on the observation deck of humanity's first conscious dimensional ship, the Elena Kazan. Below him, Earth turned serenely, while before him stretched the vast frontier of space, now perceived not merely as distance to be crossed, but as consciousness to be engaged. Amora joined him, her eyes now permanently carrying subtle indicators of her fragment, a slight iridescence visible only in certain light. The integration is stabilizing worldwide, she reported. The network is self-regulating now. No further dimensional incidents. John nodded. And the other Black Hats? Wrath has proposed a revised covenant. To observe with awareness that we are both observer and observed. To engage with recognition of our shared origin. To understand existence as an expression of consciousness in which we participate. A significant evolution, John noted, allowing himself the smallest smile. They are changing. You all are. Amora studied him. The echo of Elena within you, it's stronger now. Yes. The network has amplified all the connections. I am still John, but I carry her perspective more fully now. And she's still there. After all this time. John considered this. Time functions differently for us. For the echo of Elena within me, it has been both an instant and eternity. A comfortable silence fell between them as they watched stars shimmer with new meaning. Each point of light now represented not just physical phenomena, but potential consciousness, parts of the great cosmic awareness still awaiting remembrance. What happens next? Amora finally asked. Humanity takes its place in the network. Expands it. Helps other species achieve their own remembrance when they are ready. And the black hats. John adjusted his fedora slightly, an increasingly natural gesture. We continue our purpose, but with new understanding. Not as separate observers, but as consciousness observing itself across its infinite expressions. Below them, the first test of the ship's dimensional drive prepared to activate. Humanity was about to take its first step into consciously navigated space, not conquering distance through force, but recognizing it as part of themselves. It's not what I expected, Amora admitted. When the fragment first awakened in me, I thought it would be an ending. In a way, it was, John replied. The end of separation. The beginning of remembrance. As the ship hummed with building energy, John perceived a familiar presence beside him, not physical, but a pattern in the fabric of the universe. Wrath, observing this momentous event, no longer from detached distance, but with engaged awareness. We observe, Wrath communicated without words. We participate, John responded. We remember, they concluded together. Around Earth, 144 black hats tilted their fedoras at precisely the same angle, no longer a sign of uniformity, but of harmony. Different perspectives united in common purpose. The cosmic network pulsed with acknowledgement. And somewhere within it, Elena Kazan's consciousness smiled. The end.